Thank you for attending. Welcome to the TST Evap quick trick for Evap repairs. So tonight we're going to show you some neat stuff. My name is G. Trulli, the president of TST.
I'm Pierre, the vice president of TST.
My name is John Heiss with Global Leak Detection.
And I'm Neil, TST board member.
Okay, so here we have some guys helping, people in the background like Craig on the camera and the Bear Master back there, and plenty of other people that help us. And the objective tonight is to make sure you understand Evap system. So we're going to be on about an hour and a half. If you have questions, please make sure you ask them, type them in. Craig will read them out and we will respond to your questions. Now, before we go any further, I should tell you that number one, my voice is lousy, so I may have, that's why Pierre is here to, just in case, fill in for my big mouth.
Since I have a big mouth.
So, at any rate, coming back from California, got sick, beep, 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 you don't want to hear that. At any rate, there are 3 prizes. I mentioned this a little earlier. You have to be on to win. We will do these 3 $50 prizes. One's a gas card, and the other 2 are iTunes cards. So 3 prizes of $50 each as we're going through. And that's from our buddy here, John, who's helping us out.
And the handout.
Oh, the handout. Yes, we do have a handout. I mentioned this before, and unfortunately we got confused and got a little late. You got to go to the TST website. Greg, did you put that in?
Link is in. It's tstseminars.org/evap.pdf.
Did they hear you?
Well, you could repeat it.
I'll do it. tstseminars.org.evap/evap/pdf.
tstseminars.org.
Hang on. Coming close.
tstseminars.org/evap.pdf.
Oh,
Could you please type that in the note box?
It is there.
Okay, it is in the note box, which I thought. Okay.
Download that. Obviously, you have to be able to read PDFs to see it, but you'll be able to have it in a minimized window so you can kind of page along with us.
Right. Now, you'll be able to see everything and hear everything. It was the
Including the coughing.
Including the coffin. Sorry about
It's
that.
live.
Maybe they're going to put me in a coffin. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on here to quick tricks for Evap repairs. Make money the fast way. And now team up with your scan tool. So what we're really looking at tonight, John, right, is using a scan tool. No matter what scan tool. We have a couple picked out here tonight, but it doesn't matter what brand you have, as long as it has bi-directional control.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And what bi-directional control, John, would you be looking for in this Evap?
Well,
Give us some examples.
vent valve control, purge valve control, maybe some service bay tests or loss monitor tests, whatever the scan tools terminology is.
Okay.
Bi-directional control, so we can actually control the system and then we can watch system pressures with our smoke machines. We can do a lot of things to better diagnose the systems quicker and more accurately.
Good. So basically your scan tool, when he says purge valve, the purge valve is normally what? Closed, right? That means it has vacuum going to it and the computer is going to ground that solenoid to let vacuum through and then suck out those hydrocarbons, right? The vent valve, he said. Now your scan tool needs this control. It's a lot easier, okay? Scan tool needing the control, the vent valve is normally open. When it's normally open, meaning if you smoke it, hello, you're going to have a whole bunch of smoke coming out the back. This is not a Bond party, right? So we don't need all the smoke coming out the back. We need to shut the valve off, and we could do a test. The bay test. The bay test is specific to GM vehicles. Great to run that monitor, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a quick way to run the test, reset the monitor, and find out if you've got a system that seals or if you have a problem.
That's right. Now, sometimes the bay test times out, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because of temperature. Here's where sensor simulators, if you don't cool your car down, you may want to use, but that's for a whole other class. But just to give you some idea of what you need. So look at your scan tool, go into special tests on many of them. We'll show you a couple here as we go through. Okay? Now, John, what about all these things here? You got like 10 different things.
Well, what's interesting is with all the thousands of vehicles that have been built since OBD2 came around, and even before that when they first started putting Evap systems on vehicles, all these thousands and thousands of vehicles that have been built, hundreds of thousands, millions, they really have had one of these basic Evap systems on them. So really, the key here, the quick trick, is to test the system, not the vehicle. If you know what that system is on that vehicle, then, and you know the similarities between these systems and what makes them different, then when you approach that vehicle, you already know what to expect. When you know what to expect, you know what to inspect.
Very good. Now that brings up a good point. So in other words, you could go back to the old ported vacuum days of when Evap would suck stuff out, and you know what? All of the cars that used the solenoid were very similar to the thermostatic vacuum switches or ported vacuum switches of the day. And then you hear this word non-enhanced or enhanced Evap. Like John said, if you really understand the system, a leak detection pump could be in a Chrysler.
Sure.
We'll be talking about that tonight. Could be an Audi. Could be in a BMW.
Volkswagen.
Depends, Volkswagen. Depends on the car, right? If you understand how the system works, you don't look by the car brand. You look by, this is the system that you identify.
Exactly. And as with the case with this Jeep, there's an LDP and an LDP with a 3-valve. This particular vehicle does have the LDP with the 3-valve system. So this is probably these are the most misunderstood Evap systems that we work on. So we're going to spend some time on that tonight, explaining how some of the components of how they work inside of the leak detection pump, and how to quickly test them using your scan tool and your smoke machine together.
And see, that's a key point. When you can just sit in the seat of the car, get paid for your diagnostics, and get paid to do it right and do it easily, that's how you make money.
Absolutely.
So the two tools, again, we're concentrating on tonight is the scan tool and, of course, the smoke machine. Let's move on from there.
Okay.
Okay. So gather needed information before you begin.
One of the quick tricks that we always kind of overlook is when a customer comes in, sometimes we're busy, or for whatever reason we forget to ask them questions that really could help us determine some critical things about that vehicle. So in your download package, you'll find a few questions that we recommend that you ask the customers. One of the things that is often overlooked is a fuel level gauge. And we'll talk tonight about false codes. One of the biggest challenges that we have is the car comes in, it's got a leak code, we plug our scan tool in, we read the code, we unplug the scan, sure enough it's a leak code, we hook up the smoke machine and there's no leaks. How frustrating is that?
Yeah, and you know, you said that fuel tank. Very important. You know, I don't know about you guys, but anytime I ever change the fuel pump, that's always when a guy had a full tank, right, Pierre?
That's right, absolutely. And when you needed a long test drive, they brought it in empty.
Exactly. And by the way, on Evap, could we fix these cars or diagnose them if we don't have the right level of fuel meal, right? Right. Can't do it.
That's right. The monitors won't run unless those enabling criteria are correct.
You know, there's so many different specs. 15 to 85 is the seat of the pants type setup, but some manufacturers are a little more specific than that, and you would have to know what that amount is. So here's a safe thing: about a half a tank, and at least you know you can test. That's something for you guys to keep.
So this needed information, a lot of this stuff is critical, and we can gather that from the customer when we do the customer interview, when they come through, or they call on the phone, or they schedule it through the website, as a service appointment or a diagnostic appointment. So it's important to get this information, because as the technician can really utilize this and fast forward through the diagnostic process.
Very good.
A couple of other things, not only the fuel level, but also do they have problems at the service station? Problems filling the tank, something as simple as that. I mean, that.
Well, many of them. Many Jeeps kick back or can't fill them up.
Absolutely.
Does that indicate a leak or a clog?
Well, we'll not talk about that
We'll talk
tonight.
about that. That's something that, you know, happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
And some people, at least here in New York, you know, we have a state inspection program where that vehicle has to pass for Evap. I mean, you know, you need it. There's 1 and 2 monitors on certain vehicles, but obviously that'll throw a light. We got a good example here on this Saturn we have over here with a real code. We get our cars, you can tell by the nice full-powered 6-cylinder. I'll sell you the car over the internet now. Only kidding. We are not in the used car business, but we do have Hudson Auto Traders that are really good, giving us really nice cars to use that have issues or something that we could show you, so then you could duplicate this problem or information and help you fix a problem car. Question, Craig? Okay, so let's move on. John, unless you had
No,
something
that's
else?
fine. Go right ahead.
Okay. Now, here's the big thing with the smoke machine. Now, it doesn't matter, you know, if it's the yellow one here or a red one, don't matter, right?
Correct.
But what really matters is looking at this ball.
Absolutely. You want to qualify the leak. Okay? If we qualify the leak, that's a good first step. The quick trick here is to qualify the leak and quantify the leak size. So do we have a real leak code? We have our computer, our standard says we do. But we want to qualify that. We want to make sure by using our high resolution flow meter that we can see, okay, we have a leak through the system. We'll seal the system up. We'll look for a flow. If that flow ball doesn't drop to the bottom like that, then we know we've got a leak. We quantify the amount of the leak by seeing
Where it is.
exactly how much flow is going through that system. 2,000 and newer, anything over 20,000 flow through the system is enough to turn on the check engine light. 99 and older, anything 40,000 and more.
Right.
So your flow meters are indexed, or you've got ways to monitor that level. So
You know, the other thing, John, not to interrupt you, but what I always notice when I see guys use the smoke machine, this meter here, they don't have a clue what to really use it for.
right.
You know, and this is a key, guys and gals, that this meter gets looked at. Now, could we give them a live demo of what I always do in the class?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go over. Craig, follow us over with the camera.
Just pull those off over here. And we've got the machine hooked up, ready to go.
So we have our machine hooked up here, and you can see the ball is all the way at the top. Can they see that real good, Craig? You can see we got smoke coming out. You can see our gauge, right? Inches of water.
Does that make it better?
Okay. Now, watch when there's a restriction. Oh, yeah, it does not make it better. You try. It doesn't make it better. He's giving me the no signal from behind the camera. Now, look what happens. Where's the ball mount? So if you have a restriction, you hook this up, and you're not getting anything coming out, first of all, I would say baseline your equipment.
Right.
Am I getting it? Is my ball up top? You know, how many times your hose may be crimped, or God knows what happened. Maybe moisture in the line, right?
Or you have a leak somewhere that's...
Or you got to leave somewhere inside. Okay, so that's a quickie. Let's shut this off before it gets smoked out. I'll pick it back in 69 or something.
The other thing we can do while we're at it is you want to make sure that you've got a flow meter, or excuse me, a pressure gauge that you can adjust to zero. Because when we get onto some of the natural vacuum type systems, the switches actually operate at about -1 inch of water column. So when you're talking about go or no go at -1 inch, you want to make sure that your machine can be zero. So right there's just a little Phillips adjustment screw that you can go in and re-zero that as well. So talking about qualifying your machine, you can make sure that you have full flow, that you're...
Yeah, now we got plus and minus. Some don't have gauges like that. Okay, I know adjustable. After a while, you know, years of use, mine was out of calibration, and I had to do exactly what John showed you.
Just a minor little tweak. It costs a little bit more to have a gauge that you can adjust, but it'll save you a lot of days.
And a natural vacuum leak detection, if you don't have the right
Yeah, if you're not
setting on there.
Yeah, if you're not reading correctly, see that. One of them, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but one of the things that happens is with your scan tool, it'll tell you whether the switch is open or closed, but it doesn't tell you at what pressure or vacuum it's opening or closing.
Exactly.
You can use the pressure gauge on your smoke machine to monitor the system pressure and see what pressure it operates at. So it's important that you have that accurate.
Excellent.
So that's
Move back over this.
that's what we're talking about when we talk about qualifying the code and quantifying the leak size. Okay?
Very good.
Let's go back over. Any questions so far? Okay, let's move on.
You caught me in a sip.
That's all right. I got the button here too. So
Oh, okay.
take us back one.
All right.
One of the things talking about restrictions, one of the things that happens is that when we first hook up our smoke machine, we want to see that it does flow the way we saw when G had it running over here. One of the things that happens oftentimes is we see this is obviously a contaminated filter and canister, and these types of restrictions can cause false leak codes, can't they?
Oh, no doubt.
Because if the system can't get air and in and out and draw the hydrocarbons out of the canister, when it does a purge seal test, if it doesn't see a change in pressure or switch positions, it's going to flag a code. And so we go back to what we were talking about earlier. I've got my computer's telling me that I've got a code, but when I test it with my smoke machine, I see no flow. What's going on? How can that be? Well, one of the things you want to be aware of is the restriction factor.
Right, and you know, where these things are low-hanging fruit on a vehicle, it's easy for mud and dirt,
Yes.
sometimes insects and so on, to get in and clog these things up. I mean, here, looks like someone went four-wheeling.
Yeah, that's a little bit of dirt there, isn't it?
Little Baja.
Yeah. So what happens, it's very simple, guys. When you use your flow meter, you want a high-resolution flow meter so you can see the flow through the system. When you hook it up with the scan tool connected and the system in its normal state, that's with the back door open on an enhanced system, then you should get flow through the system.
Sure. If
So
that thing's not all the way up and nothing's coming out the back, you got a clog somewhere.
exactly. That ball might drop real fast. The quick trick is, using the scan tool, I can watch my fuel tank pressure sensor, and I can see if the pressure starts to come up.
So that FTP PID, fuel tank pressure sensor PID, is a very important PID to look at, isn't it?
Absolutely, especially when you're creating pressure with your smoke machine, because you can actually check the range of the FTP PID, but you can also see if the system is restricted. Here's another thing, G. What if I hook up my smoke machine and the ball drops to the bottom and I get no smoke flowing through the system at all, but my fuel tank pressure sensor doesn't show any increase? Then I know that my
Restriction.
is upstream or towards the purge side of the system.
So let's just go over that again. So a good quick tip, you have a system with an FTP, fuel tank pressure sensor. You're smoking it. If you see that the ball is not flowing, okay,
Yeah.
what happens is you have a restriction. Now look at the fuel tank pressure sensor voltage and see, did the voltage change? If it didn't, you have it up front.
Right.
From where you're actually smoking it from.
Now, if I had this situation, on the other hand, my fuel tank pressure sensor may be going all the way up to 13 inches
Oh, no
water
doubt.
or whatever the range is for the FTP sensor.
Right.
But I might be maxing out on that sensor. Then I know, okay, I'm getting my flow and everything all the way back to the tank, but maybe not through the vent. Okay. So it's real simple. You've got the smoke machine hooked up. You got your scan tool hooked up. You haven't closed anything. You're just monitoring the system.
And let's go over something else that's important. You know, I always tell guys there are some machines, and not to knock any companies, but I don't like people using air pressure when we have hydrocarbon vapors. You know, we have our little tank on there with CO2, that's what I use. CO2 works real well because it's a non-inert type of gas. And, you know, that helps us move the smoke through the system without causing any problems,
Right.
correct?
Yep, absolutely. Inert gases are the best way to test because they're non-flammable. So you have a gas that you can use as a pressure source, because really that's all we're using it for, is a pressure source. We don't need it to test the system. We're just using it to push the smoke into the system.
Right. And we can also use nitrogen.
Absolutely. Nitrogen, argon, CO2, any inert gas.
Right. Wherever you can get the gas easy. So,
Carbon monoxide, but I wouldn't use that. Yeah.
well, unless we want to get rid of Pierre, talk to him about it.
Not tonight.
We'll do this here in a little bit. We'll actually get it. One of the things that happens also is when we get into systems that, we'll take, for example, a purge valve here. This is a purge valve that came off of a vehicle, and the reason that we'll talk about this is because a lot of guys don't think about the purge valve. It's normally closed, right? So I don't really expect anything going on up there, but what if I don't get vacuum into the system? Would that cause a false code?
Sure.
Because again, the switch isn't changing position, is it? And what about the fuel tank pressure sensor? Does it change when there's nothing coming in?
When you see stuff like this, guys, excuse me, that charcoal canister's come apart, and it's going to constantly mess up whatever new valve you put in. You know, you get the one from the blue guy, the yellow guy, one stinks, one sucks, whatever, guess what? You need to look at yourself. You are making a mistake because you need to flush everything out. Now, this is a great trick, and probably if you're old like me, you have some of these, although my son threw out a bunch of these that I had. Why don't you show them that, John?
Well, basically, what we're talking about here is you get a system like this where maybe the canister has been driving down the road, and we've got a whole bunch of canisters cut apart here.
Here, you can help.
You can see these filters. You can see the filters, and actually this one here has some springs in it to help cushion and keep the charcoal compressed. But this shaker box is rolling down the road, right?
Especially on pickups.
And your teeth are rattling, so you know what this is going through.
Oh, why change the struts or the shocks?
Yeah,
Who needs that?
who needs that? So what happens is we've got all these canisters cut apart so you can see what's inside of them. Well, that charcoal breaks down, just like anything else. You rumble it enough, pretty soon it's going to break down. And when it goes into purge mode, it's pulling what? Pulling that vacuum.
All that vacuum through with all the fine dust. That fine dust is what we have up on the screen. So
Absolutely.
that fine dust could be a problem.
And if you change that purge valve and you don't make sure it's clean, even if you did change the canister, it's going to go bad again immediately. And it wasn't the fault of the valve.
Well, and the thing is that we also want to make sure that if we do see this kind of action going on at the purge valve, we want to take a darn close look at that canister, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, we want to make sure that we blow out the lines as good as possible. We'll never get them 100% probably, but we can at least blow it out. But the quick trick is take a inline fuel filter. These are typically about a 10 micron fuel filter. And this becomes your eye into the system, really.
Correct, can you zone in on it?
Because what happens here is if this is in series on the purge line, everything that comes up from the canister is going to go right through this before it goes into that purge valve, isn't it?
You know, this is just, I love this. And we used to use these on carbureted vehicles, and you can see all, Craig, I don't know if you can you get that?
Yeah.
You see all that charcoal in there.
Now, by the way, if
The
your
brakes is
auto parts store doesn't have these anymore, or something like a lawnmower shop probably will.
Right.
Because they still use this type of a fuel filter.
But we used to use this on carbureted.
Oh yeah, all the time, long time ago.
And think about this evap system as like when you have a clog in the air conditioning system, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you don't put some sort of filter in, what's going to happen?
You're going to mess up that new compressor you just put
There you
in.
go.
Come back. Do I? Here, come back.
Yeah.
So just a quick trick is to go ahead, guys, put a little safety insurance in the line. If you use a clear one like this, it's also easy to show the customer, hey, we put this in line, we still have a problem here. Glad we put this in because this is protecting that new purge
Yeah, I
valve.
highly recommend the clear one. There's nothing like show and tell.
That's right.
Right? When you say, hey, it was clean in the beginning, maybe you can take a digital picture, and then when they come back, it's like this, you need to change it.
Absolutely.
And they may need to change it 3-4 times, depending
Depending on how
good the
long
system is.
and how long they drove the vehicle with this shaker box breaking down.
And remember, you got sucking going on. You got sucking going on, you got stuff going on, right?
So they say. All right. On that note, I think we'll move to the
Next slide.
next slide.
You have questions?
Question.
Okay.
We love questions.
Absolutely.
All right. Couldn't we do all the tests described so far using onboard FTP, PID, purge, and vent bidirectional controls? Please repeat the question.
There are questions that are going to come up here about this because these are things that we can do to a certain degree, but the synergy between using everything together is what makes it unique and very useful. So
Yeah, so merely using the PIDs from the scan tool may not be totally sufficient. You're going to need to, like we said before, if we introduce the smoke in there and we see that FTP is not moving, then we know we have an issue, a clog from the front.
right.
If it is moving, we know we got something going on, correct?
Right, absolutely. And another good point is, that as you bring up, G, is that if we're just looking at an FTP PID, for instance, all we're seeing is a command and result.
Right.
If we bring the smoke machine into play and put flow through the system, now we know what's flowing into the system and what's flowing out or what's not flowing.
So that's what you use the gauge for.
The gauging
Look
the
at
flow
that.
meter. Flow meter does an awesome job.
Look at that,
Yeah.
amazing, right?
So these are all pretty extreme situations, and they did get by a few shops before they got this bad. So we got to assume that there was probably some intermittent Do we ever have intermittent problems with purge valves and vent valves?
I mean, the light sometimes comes on, or you changed one, another shop changed another one.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
So we want to make sure that we catch these items quickly. Good question.
Yeah, did everyone hear that question?
We have more questions.
Okay, I'm gonna come next to you for the question.
Oh, for the
I
microphone?
want to save my voice.
All right. Can you explain how the mustard seed in, I won't name the smoke machine, but it's a common one, can be used to test the FTP sensor? Should the FTP sensor voltage match how far the mustard seed has climbed up in the column? It's that brand right there behind you.
I want to see how the FTP pressure on the float. Let me make sure I understand the question correctly. They're asking about the FTP sensor by watching the flow meter?
Yes.
No, we're going to watch the flow meter for flow in through the system. For pressure readings, for pressure comparison, we're going to use the pressure gauge, because the FTP sensor reads in typically from a range of minus, we'll say 10 inches of water column to plus 6 inches of water column. So we're reading pressure with the gauge, we're reading flow with the flow meter. So we definitely can do that, but we're going to use the pressure gauge rather than the flow meter. Next question.
Why don't you just put a mic in there?
Won't the filter adversely affect system flow?
Absolutely, if it's plugged up. And that's why the first thing we want to do is look at the flow meter. The question is whether or not that filter is plugged up to the point that it causes a full restriction. So we can actually, if we get used to using that flow meter, we can quantify that leak as it's progressively getting worse and worse. We don't have to wait until it's completely plugged like this and becomes, a major headache.
I think he has this filter here. I think the issue is this filter would have to be choked to block flow.
I'm sorry.
Because it has a tremendous amount of surface area as opposed to the surface area of the hose, of the plumbing. So yes, it would block flow once it's plugged, but it would be totally choked with activated charcoal by then.
Good point. Thank you.
Any other questions, Craig?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on, John.
Okay.
Here we go.
While we've got our scan tool and this kind of goes back to the previous question. While we have our scan tool connected and our smoke machine connected, it is a good time to validate the fuel tank pressure sensor. We can go in this case, we're in the purge seal mode, and we can see we've got minus 5.63 inches of water column, and on the gauge we're showing about minus 5.5 inches of water column.
Now that is a real good one to do. Now again, if you don't have a gauge on there, how do you know the scan tool is correct? Right? So when you're using the PID, this happens to be, a factory GM tool here, the Tech 2, but you can see that this matches up. So scan data sometimes is not 100% accurate. Sometimes there's false information in there. This is a way of verifying that, in fact, it's good, right?
Absolutely. And fuel tank pressure sensors are kind of like, they're strain gauges. They're like the old MAP sensors that we used to have back in the 80s. When they start to drift and go out of calibration, then they can start giving false readings to the computer and all kinds of crazy things happen. So this is a quick way to validate, and it takes you another step further. A lot of your procedures will say to check the voltage at rest. In other words, no pressure on the system. So you get a neutral voltage, and okay, it's within that spec, so I guess it's as good as it gets, right? Well, actually, if you use your smoke machine, and you can use your smoke machine to put positive pressure on the system, use your purge seal test to draw it into a negative state. Now I can see the whole range of that. I can see it from minus.
So opening and closing.
Absolutely.
You open that purge valve, we're going to start sucking down, aren't we?
Yeah.
So pressure's going to drop. You then can see that it's actually working.
Right. So we can do all of this, and really, we've just we've gathered all this information, and we've only been on the car. We haven't even got out of the driver's seat.
I'm not even cracking the stick yet.
We've got under the hood to get, but we haven't really jumped into it very far. Okay. One other thing we want to also be aware of is that when we are checking the Evap system, there's always a possibility of a rollover valve being closed because of the pressure that any smoke machine is going to make. That's in some cases will close the rollover valve.
And let me stop you there in case people don't know what a rollover valve is, because not everyone does. A rollover valve's job is to prevent gas from coming out in case the car is in an accident. Now, another thing it does, if we have a machine that we're putting pressure in, some of these are very sensitive, like you said, and could possibly close off this filler neck, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And what about the cars that have the filler neck that come in down at the bottom of the tank? What if we got a half a tank of fuel?
Yes, of course.
We may not get smoke up here, huh?
They may only get that code coming on when gas is at a certain level, right?
Absolutely.
When it's pretty damn low.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
What do you need to do, John?
well, the quick trick here is to, while you've got smoke flowing through the system, you can go ahead and close the vent valve, and seal the system. And if you suspect this, you can just walk over and take the gas cap off. If the ball on the flow meter goes all the way to the top, I know that I'm testing that filler neck, right? And if I push that little flapper door down like we did here, then I can see the smoke coming out. I know I'm testing the filler neck. The quick trick here is to know, am I testing the filler neck or am I not?
So no smoke comes out the cap. Hey, the cap is off, no smoke out. I am not testing that filler neck.
Yeah, exactly. And how am I going to do it? Well, grab one
Well,
of these.
let me just, one thing before you grab that. Pierre, as you know here on the East Coast, we get a whole bunch of problems with rusted filler necks. A lot of the Hondas even right up top. A lot of the Subarus going down the end. There's many, many cars. And if we're not looking for this, we need to actually look for this. So what do you have to test this? Well, John is coming with a cap that we can test it from this way. So if we put a cap over the top of this and we go down, we could smoke it the opposite way and look for smoke that is coming out. So John is right here.
And by the way, sometimes you can visually see how rusted these things are. If you can get a view of it under the car, if it's got holes or whatever in it, if it's showing a stain from gasoline leaking down it from the last fill up, you're pretty much done.
Well, it looks like the hull of the Titanic, because they're so rusty from salt and stuff, they're pretty brutal. But this is the baby.
Yeah, so the quick trick here is when you see this type of situation, if you're not testing the filler neck, just get a filler neck adapter, pops right over the top, and now you can have quick, easy access, and you can test the whole system right through the filler neck.
And you were saying you had something else before I interrupted?
No, this is what I was going for was the.
So restriction test on.
Okay, what we want to do next is move over to this Saturn, and we're going to go ahead and do a couple of tests on the car, just for the sake of showing you what we've been talking about here. We want to go through this real quick because it's something we can do quick and easy. Basically, the system right now is at rest. The thing we're going to do is simply turn on our smoke machine.
Pressure, look at that. We have flow, don't we? Look at the ball.
Full flow all the way to the top.
All the way to the top. If I shut it off, watch it. Watch the gauge, watch the ball. Ball drops, gauge goes to 0. Back on. So what's this telling us? We're getting flow coming out of this, aren't we? Okay.
What happens if I have a restriction?
Oh, John, look at that. My ball's at the bottom. I said ball.
Well, that's right.
Careful.
And you notice that the system pressure by the smoke
Went up.
has gone up. Right, absolutely. So now I've got flow back into the system. So the first thing, as we talked about earlier, the flow meter is very important. So we can quickly go in and take a look at what's going on. The next thing that we want to do, as we already discussed, is if we do see a problem here, if we see flow being restricted, what would we want to do, Gene? We'd want to bring up.
Okay. We're going to use the OTC Genesis Evo here. I'm just going to hit reuse. Okay. Go back to that Saturn. Save a little time here. And as this is going into the car, key on here?
Keys on.
Okay, so the key is on. Nice when you have helpers. Saves me from going over there. So now we got to wait, just like everything. Remember, when you're doing stuff live, it takes time. Okay, so we're actually doing this test like you would do in your shop.
You want to take a question in the meantime?
Sure. Well, we came up. But we'll take a question. Yeah.
All right. We have someone who has a 99S10 with a small Evap leak DTC. It comes and goes. With the Tech 2, you run a bank test and it passed. And it resets the monitor and it's ready for a pass inspection. 2 weeks later, it's back on. What do you think you should start looking at?
One of the things that is common is these intermittents we talked about earlier. I would, and there have been service bulletins written about this, if you want to go in when you're testing the system, cycle that vent valve closed and open, closed and open.
So John, you mean they could possibly stick at certain times?
Well, you might just find that when you test it, at that moment, you got to keep in mind, guys, when these monitor tests are running, a lot of times, the car's running down the road, isn't it?
So you mean water and salt
All
and
that
dirt and
shaking,
sand?
yeah.
Vibration on rubber O-rings, things
Absolutely.
like that.
So a couple of things that come to mind, I would say cycle as we're about to do here, cycle that solenoid off and on, off and on, off and on, especially if you suspect any type of contamination issue.
And by the way, if we had discussed this previously when we were setting up, pound your fist on the tank or push on the tank or try to wiggle things, you know, the same types of protocols that are used for electrical wiring faults that are intermittent.
Wiggle, jerk, feel, and massage.
Wiggle, jerk, feel, and massage. You've got to try to torque it into failing.
No doubt, because intermittent things are tough.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you bang them or put them on, oh, all of a sudden smoke, or we have flow or the flow stops, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely, and the wiggle test is very important. Always want to go through and just wiggle the connections and watch that flow meter, because what happens is that's an immediate response.
Right.
It's going to jump immediately. If you get into a cracked hose or something like that, you'll see it right away. Go do it.
Correct. Now, we have this on. We're going to go in first and look at trouble codes. I'm not going to scan the whole car, but I want to look at trouble codes because we got to see this. We're going to read the codes. I went into the malfunction code first. Let's see what comes up. We got a 442, small leak. This is the one that kills a lot of you guys, a small leak, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's tough. Well, we're going to show you how it could be a lot easier if to play with this. Now, you're not done yet, because what I like to look at, I went into the mill code. I want to go into history codes or failure records. You're going to go failure records. Failure records are something that's recorded in GM. If you're on a Tech 2, it'll do it. If you're in generic OBD2, you'll have freeze frames. Some car companies give you more than one freeze frame. But here, we're going to look at failure records, and in a second, it should come up. Everything, again, live takes time. Sorry. But once this comes up, we can kind of verify when it happened. And is there anything else associated with it? Come on.
Well, Todd Erickson says intermittent has a pattern, random does not.
Ooh,
I guess that's a good tip.
very good tip. That's a quick tip.
So, Todd, what was his name? Okay, Todd says intermittent has a pattern, right? And
The random
does not.
Random does not.
okay, so look at this, 2 failure records. So failed twice for 442. Okay. Now before I had something else, let's just look at a record just to see what it is. Now sometimes you'll come up with a different code as well. Let's take a look. As we're waiting, all of these will take itsy bitsy time, especially the way the scan tool is hooked up to a monitor. It does take a little longer. And by the way, I do want to tell you guys, when you're on a car with your scan tool, be patient and stop pressing buttons, because sometimes it does take its bit. Now look, it did come up. It told me the RPMs I was at, 1782, 190, the air temperature, gave me this whole bunch of stuff. Evap vent blockage wasn't run. The Evap tank vacuum was a negative 0.60 inches of water. And the purge solenoid was at 0%. So it gives you some good stuff here. Fuel level. Hey, that could be important the next time we want, because as we said before, well, look at the fuel level. Maybe if it was a full tank, we know you can't do it. And maybe if the tank was too low, you can't do it. And maybe if it was a half a tank, you couldn't do it on certain vehicles.
And maybe the leak is under the level where the fuel is when the tank's 3/4 full.
Or maybe there's no leak at all and that fuel level sensor is not moving.
Right.
Could be it.
And it's messing with the computer strategy.
Could be another false leak code, couldn't it?
So let's see if we have any other questions there, Craig, while I go take one more look at a history thing here. Any other questions? Nope, just a 4-foot through there.
Okay, let's go in and close our vent valve and let's,
Oxygen sensitivity. Okay, don't worry about that. Now what we're going to do is go down to special test. And Craig, if you can look in on that screen there. We're going to go to special test on our tool. You hit OK. We're going to go into this group. We're going to go down to Evap. And that's canister vent solenoid. Now a little tip. On newer vehicles, 2010 and up, late 2010, so 2011 on a lot of them, in generic global OBD2, we now have mode 8. Mode 8 allows you to close the vent solenoid. The EPA knows some of the top 10 codes, a couple of them are always Evap. So what did they do? They mandated a rule to scan tool manufacturers to put in close that vent valve. That's mode 8 in your generic scan tool. Try it when you get a chance. But for now, we'll do the real thing. Let's put that back on.
okay, turn on the smoke machine, get the flow going.
All right.
So go ahead and close the vent valve.
And here we go. Now open this data link. I'm going to hit my start here. Wait for some data to come in. Let's see what comes up on the PIDs. Okay. And I'm going to click start. And I'm going to put the test on. Watch the ball.
Okay, ball's way at the top.
Way at the top.
Is there any chance we can get a fuel tank pressure sensor display up there, Gene? While we're doing this? Is that, no, I mean, as far as on the...
Oh, the scan tool.
Yeah, the scan tool.
Let me see. Ah, there we go. Pressure, fuel tank pressure sensor.
Okay.
Okay, so right here, you just give it a second to come up. Fuel tank pressure, 1.43 volts. Fuel tank pressure in inches of water, a negative 0.41.
As you can see, we're putting about maybe 5 inches of water column pressure on the system. So really, our fuel tank pressure sensor is not really showing us a whole lot, is it?
Now,
So
so again, real important, John. Craig, zoom over here, just so we can see that we're putting on this pressure into the system, but we're not reading that there, are we?
Right, we've got the back door closed, right?
Back door is closed. So what's that going to tell you?
Do I look for a leak or do I look for a fuel tank pressure sensor? Maybe a restriction on this side of the fuel tank pressure sensor.
Exactly. So here's the fuel tank pressure sensor in the back of the car, right? So it can't be back there. It got to be before it. So we can have anything prior to that. I don't see any smoke here.
No.
Do we have any smoke anywhere up here?
Take a light and look underneath. Because it could be a leak on,
It's getting a little smoky back there.
could be a leak in front of the...
Oh, I see smoke.
Yeah, it's up in front of the...
I don't know if you can get down there, Craig, with that.
There is smoke coming out here.
Oh, just look up here.
There we go. We see it.
You see it coming out?
Yeah.
And that's not the vent valve. You should
Now watch. Oh,
I that vent valve closed.
shut
This
that
appears to
down.
be a pipe, actually.
Ah,
I'm gonna turn this off. And we still see smoke coming out,
Oh,
right?
yeah, there's smoke.
I'm gonna reopen the link. And by the way, if I shut this off, then we know
yeah, it's not holding any...
not holding any of that. And that's the next thing. If I was able to keep this up when I shut it off, well, come on.
Yeah.
I would have some sort of seal going on somewhere.
Yeah, if
For
the
a car.
pressure stays up, of course, we'd have to have the vent valve closed, but if the pressure would have stayed up and slowly bled off, then we would see, okay, I've got a small leak. But
So,
this is,
something like,
yeah, so there's, yeah, you turn that off, there you go. And you gotta maybe bleed it, let it bleed out a little bit more there, there you go. So you got a small leak.
that'd be a small leak.
Yeah, fast leak would be something more like,
and boom,
push off. Yeah, there you go.
right off. So that's a fast leak. A small leak is something, a lot of times, like this, if you said it's a line, you know in some of these GM cars, they rust, the lines rust.
Yeah, this is right
They
by a
start to
plant, by the
piss.
way, by the looks of it.
When they pit, and sometimes you go over it in your bracket or whatever, some vibration, a little piece of rust falls off, the leak gets worse. Then who knows, it flexes a little bit, clogs up a bit. The
And by-
small leaks are
By
tough.
the way, on a small leak, especially if it's over a tank or something like that, if your shop has the doors open, the fans on, you may never see that smoke. It may blow away in such small quantities that you can't see it. You may have to close the bay door to find out whether you have a leak there, to
Sure.
see where the smoke is.
And Bob, turn off the air gun.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
You know, that'll do you. So here we got bi-directional control, and even though we'll put it on again,
Yeah, let's cycle that vent valve a few times
okay,
while we're at it here. We'll turn this.
there we go, I'm on,
On. Get some flow going
I'm
again.
off.
Yeah, just show the guys how easy that is. On and off.
On, off. You can see the state up top. On, off.
Cycle that a few times. Watch that flow meter ball, because maybe it seals all of a sudden. Maybe there was some contamination in there, and all of a sudden we it flushes on through the system, and all of a sudden it starts to seal. Then I know right away that, okay, I'm definitely dealing with an intermittent, and I know it's a vent valve, because that's what I'm working with.
Sure.
Gee, I could do the same thing with the purge valve, couldn't I?
You bet. Same exact thing with the purge valve. And if you graph this before you go in on this scan tool, if you graph it, you can see a line going up and down, which is sometimes easier on the eye, and maybe you're not going to remember the 1.43, but if you saw the line was straight and it didn't go up or down, hello, nothing happened.
Yeah.
It's not a question of, oh, I forgot to write that number down.
Right.
We just didn't see anything.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right. What else do we want to do
Well,
on this
let's
call?
see, we got,
Plenty of time.
okay, maybe we should have a drawing.
Oh, drawing time. Da, da, da,
Let's do a
da, da. How do we do this draw?
Tell me what prize is up, and we will.
Let's do
Randomly
a
pick someone.
$50 iTunes, and then we'll put the money in between.
All right. I need a microphone here.
Okay. I'll give you a microphone right here.
First winner is Lloyd Weld. Lloyd Weld, W-E-L-D-E. You have to type in on the chat bar that you'd like to redeem your prize. Lloyd Weld.
We're going to need their information, email, and then the company will email them.
All
So
right.
Lloyd, well, congratulations for a $50 iTunes gift card. That'll keep you awake.
What's the next prize?
Well, we're only doing one now.
That's it? All
We
right.
got 2 more prizes to go.
Should we give the guys 5 minutes to take a break if they need to?
No,
we
man.
don't
Then
usually
we'll do
take
that?
breaks.
Okay,
We
I'm
just,
the new guy in town, so I'm not sure.
not a problem. We just keep going.
Okay.
Sorry. Are we done with this car, or do we want to put this up?
Well, if you guys would like to take a look at it, we can definitely raise it up and
Okay,
see what we've
let's
got.
shut the battery charger off.
Let's go ahead and
You can't see it.
hold it, I'll disconnect.
You can't see it.
So we'll disconnect this. A little clear.
I'm not sure that they've seen anything. Now we go.
So put this up, we got our smoke machine on. I got it. Put up the black light. While we're putting this up,
There's still smoke coming out. Oh, you already turned it on again.
you see that smoke right? Actually, it's pretty bad.
And now,
It's a rotted
you
line.
can't see it from your camera angle, but it is the line where it's in a clamp. So you know it's the classic rusty mess, salt or whatever got in there and it braided it.
hang on here, it looks like someone used duct tape, a mechanic's best friend.
Wow.
Seriously, look.
They tried to duct tape an evap line.
Look,
Is that what that is? That's not just, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, I can see it bubbling out of there.
There it is.
Oh,
That's a good one. And, yeah, look at that. Wow. That is,
smoke everywhere.
that is no small leak.
you know the nice thing is, the fluorescent dye will mark that, so when you take that out for your customer, and you have a trusty little black light, you'll be able to actually show them that, hey, that line was indeed leaking.
Now, by the way, that dye does not light up the smoke for you. It lights up, it leaves a stain after the fact, so you can find the leak. So don't expect to shine the black light up while the smoke's coming out and say, oh,
What
that's
colors?
it. No.
Isn't this strawberry field
Too
forever?
little, no. Too little dye in each little bit of
Latter
smoke.
part, the question.
It accumulates.
Absolutely.
Okay, do we have questions?
Yes, since the smoke machine is under pressure, do you expect the pressure to affect the reading of the FTP sensor? If it does, can this cause a problem when troubleshooting evap problems?
Actually, we want to see the increase from the pressure gauge on the smoke machine as we're putting pressure in the system. That tells us the fuel tank pressure sensor is reading properly. So actually, that's a very good test to see. And as we mentioned earlier, on the positive and the negative side of the sensor, check it both directions. Absolutely.
I got a good tip. Someone said,
Hey, yeah, let's hear
Tip it up.
if your smoke machine does not come with dye, with the evap fluid, just add a drop of AC dye. And
Not a good idea.
that's what he does.
Well, not a good idea, especially with safety standards out there and material safety data sheets. This is a special dye. You may even clog something up in the system.
Yeah.
This is not, by the way, I gave that idea to Larry Gouge years back, oil dye.
16 years ago.
About 16 years ago, I said, hey, I use this oil dye, never mind air conditioned dye, and why can't you just use it in here? It took them quite a few years because it's not simply putting it in the smoke machine. It could ruin some of the smoke machines and ruin the components on the vehicle.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for the tip, but unfortunately it's not.
It's the right direction.
It's the right direction.
But the problem is that there's two components here. The dye component is a special component, and it's approved by the OEMs because they tested it. They know that it does not harm their sensors, does not harm their systems. The highly refined smoke oil that's used in conjunction with the dye to make the ultra trace UV is also tested. It's highly refined and it will withstand the heat that smoke machines make. So the other thing, the other side of that is that we're not actually burning oil to make the smoke.
Right.
The dye, somehow they figured out that the dye will separate because of the pressure differential behind the leak compared to what's in front of the leak. And it's at that exact point of leakage that the dye separates out and deposits. The other thing is, it's not a permanent dye.
Right.
If you use a refrigerant dye or some of those are permanent dyes. And so now you've got permanent dye
Through the whole system.
through the whole
Right.
system possible.
And you don't know where the leak is. Everything you take off could be an issue.
So, and very good point. So what happens is if I do find a gross leak like this, it's actually flagged as a small leak, but then we find out after we take the duct tape off, it's a gross leak. There's probably all kinds of dye there. I can just simply wipe it off, do the repair, replace the line in this case,
Right.
and then check my connections again. And I
Just cut it out.
don't have to worry about residual dye.
Exactly.
Because if I go back in there with my UV light and I see more dye, do I know if that's from before or is that from my new connection?
Exactly. That is the problem with the dyes. I used to use, oil dye, antifreeze dye. There were all different types of dyes. But again, as you stated, this is not the same type.
Yeah.
So you can't really use it. And there are, by the way, SAE papers that talk about oil and dye and the different problems that you can have. You can check sae.org out for more information. Okay, so let's move on to our next setup.
Where's our button at?
And here we go. Click your right up. Okay, let's talk about this neat FTP sensor validation chart.
Yeah, in your downloads, you have FTP sensor validation chart. This particular one's for Ford, but you'll have There's a few different car manufacturers. Sometimes this information is hard to find, so we put some of those in your download package so that you'll have some reference. And it just kind of goes to show you, for instance, Ford, they're resting voltage at 2.625 volts. GM 1.5, and there's might be some ranges, but the idea that we want you to gather here, and a quick tip is that you can actually look at this. For instance, on this Ford, it'll read from minus 17.8 inches of water column to 16.06 inches of water column. GM, I think you'll see top out about 6 or 7 inches of water column.
Right.
And it'll go down, you know.
So at least this is a good chart to give us some reference to what we could say.
Exactly, and be aware,
Yeah.
because it's not like just power. Once we know that there is a range and there is certain values that should be achieved, we can test it
Sure.
very quickly,
Oh, yeah.
very easily. Okay?
Very good. So now let's do a LVP.
How about we talk about the leak detection pump? Okay? Let's, we've got a
Oh
leak
yeah, let's
detection
get that
pump.
in, Pierre.
We've got a
if you
leak
could set
detection
that up.
pump here that we've got cut apart. Before we get into testing the leak detection pump system, we want to talk a little bit about the leak detection pump. This is probably the most misunderstood part of the most misunderstood system out there. Somewhere I got a screwdriver so I can keep my hands out of the way here. But basically, the leak detection pump is essentially two very essential components. It's the back door. The vent valve is down here in the bottom, and as you can see, it's normally closed here. Or excuse me.
Open.
Well, thank you. To see if
Normally
anybody's
open his vent.
asleep. Right.
He wanted to see if I was sleeping.
That's right. So what happens
Light on it
is
or not?
we also can create a slight amount of system pressure with the leak detection pump. That's what it does. It's only there to test the system integrity. Okay. And in the leak detection pump, you're looking at if you've downloaded your package, there's a cutaway view in there of your leak detection pump. And so what you are looking at, is your the solenoid on top, right here. We'll just pick this
Maybe
up.
you could hand those things.
Yeah, we just kind of broke one apart to show you. This is the solenoid, and what the solenoid does is controlled by the PCM, and inside the solenoid, there's this little shuttle valve. And I'll try to show this. I don't know if you can see this or not on this. But this is a little shuttle valve that shuttles back and forth, and it's right up here in the top and controlled by the solenoid. Okay, so that shuttle valve runs back and forth, and what's it going to do? It's going to direct either manifold vacuum or atmosphere. Manifold vacuum comes over here, comes in over on this side. Atmosphere comes over on this side. So that shuttle valve going back and forth can either apply vacuum to this chamber or can apply atmosphere to this chamber.
Correct. Looks like a little needle in the seat from a carburetor days, right?
Very similar, absolutely. So when the vacuum is applied, what happens? Vacuum overrides the spring tension and the diaphragm is drawn up. When the diaphragm goes up, you'll notice there's another component in this diaphragm. Here's the diaphragm, and here is the other component that I was talking about, this interrupter. And this interrupter goes up with it. So this interrupter, what it does is it runs between the switch and the magnet. So here's the switch, and if you can envision basically envision the magnet over here. This interrupter, when it gets in the up position, when the diaphragm comes up, what's it doing? It's blocking the magnetic lines of force, right? So that switch will go open. When the diaphragm is down, the switch is closed. Okay, so when the pump is actually pumping, this diaphragm is fluttering up here in the top third. It never really goes all the way down.
My fingers don't move that fast.
We'll
but
show
it's-
you.
It's doing a good job. But you'll see in here, this is not moving.
Right, and actually I was just going to say, what happens when that diaphragm is all the way down, it's actually pushing down and opening the vent valve.
And that's its normal position.
It's normal.
normally open.
Yeah, so if we're going to test a leak detection pump system, what do we need to do? Close the vent valve.
No doubt.
So we'll show you how to do that using your scan tool in the leak detection pump test. I could also go in and ground the center wire or control the center wire and then test it that way as well. But there's a quick, easy way to do it from right the driver's seat, and I can see what's going on. I can monitor the center wire. Pardon me.
And by the way, you have to be very careful about that grounding thing, because that little magnetic reed switch is extremely fine, and power probing it will immediately destroy that leak detection pump.
Oh, so I wouldn't want to ground that center.
You probably would not want to do that, because if you slip and hit the other connector, it's done.
Well, that's why we said we're only using scan tools in this. We're not using jumper wires
The
or
common
anything else.
mistake is people think that if I ground that center wire,
That's it.
I can test it. Well, you ground that center wire.
You may have bought it.
You may have just bought a new one. Well, now you know it's bad anyway.
You know for sure that's bad.
Yeah, but you'll do the same on the new one you get.
You might, yes.
So let's finish up here real quick. There's a couple more components in here. As the diaphragm goes up, we talked about, manifold vacuum pulls it up. Well, what happens when the diaphragm goes up, the interrupter comes up in between and the switch opens, right?
Yep.
So then the computer cuts the feed to the solenoid. So the shuttle valve then comes over from the vacuum side, blocks the vacuum side, and opens the atmosphere side. So atmosphere is it comes in here. And now what? Spring tension overrides.
Right. And this is about 7 inches of water, right? It's calibrated spring.
Yeah, so the pump will continue to run until it generates about that amount of pressure, and then the diaphragm actually stops. Okay? When the diaphragm goes up, there's on this side over here, there's a filter and there's a check valve that only lets air come into the chamber below the diaphragm. And then when the diaphragm flutters down about this far, then it'll go ahead and push out over here on the check valve on the outlet side, putting pressure and a small amount of air into the system.
And common failures on these are the diaphragms.
Yes, diaphragms can fail. As we pointed out, the switches.
And these little valves here could technically leak too.
Yeah, these check valves, even though there is a lot of filtration in the system, I mean, there's a number of things here that can go bad, isn't it? But there's also a number of things that we can monitor by using our scan tool while we watch the test, and we can actually...
And we're going to be showing you that soon.
And we can also, if we pressurize the system when the diaphragm's up and that switch is open, we pressurize that system with smoke, what's going to happen? It's going to hold that vent valve shut, the diaphragm's going to stay up, and we can go ahead and do our full leak test, start looking for smoke, or we can watch it, we can see how fast the diaphragm drops down and the switch closes.
Sure, and I think they could see that. If you look in here, watch this
You
here.
see that okay?
As the diaphragm, there's that. So normally open. Can you see that okay, Craig?
Very quick, very simple. That's kind of how the leak detection pump works. And what we wanted to do before we actually show you the test on the vehicle is make sure everybody understands this. It's probably one of the most misunderstood components of any Evap system. Okay, any questions on the leak detection pump, Craig?
Okay, so I guess we move to the car.
Yeah, let's go live. Let's come on over here now and let's switch our display. Hopefully we're still awake over here. Everything's still connected.
We had our battery maintainer on there, right? Yep.
Yep.
Good.
Okay, so we're going to go to leak detection pump test.
I'm going to pull this out of the way.
And please, thank you. And it says the pressurized Evap system and hold for leak selection number 3, hold PSI. So we click OK.
So it says engine must be running to perform this test.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and start.
It may be necessary to remove purge solenoid electrical connector. So they're giving you a warning on the scan tool.
What scan tool is this?
This is the
Maxidos.
Auto?
Auto.
All right.
Okay, the engine's running, so we're just going to click OK. Now this system, while it was running, this system, as I mentioned earlier, does have a 3-way valve in it. And you can a lot of times you can associate that with the onboard vapor recovery system. But the key thing is check the emission decal, because it'll say leak detection pump, it'll say MVLV, it'll say the leak detection pump and the 3-way valve will be identified as it is here. So it's a good idea to quickly take a look at that emission decal so you know for sure the type of system that you're working on.
Now we're establishing vehicle communication again. Where sometimes the key's off, you put it back on. Like I said, doing it live with scan tools doesn't matter what brand you have. They all do take some time. So here, testing, not communicating with control unit.
Okay, let's make sure it's switched on. It is. Okay, so it's okay.
Look again. Now, even though we did this prior, as you can imagine, everything always works but Murphy's Law. When you're doing it live, something's going to happen. So he's going to go into the system test. It always feels like 100 years, maybe more.
A quick question.
Great question.
So if we were at 6.0 on the machine, should the sensor read about 3.475?
On the fuel tank pressure sensor?
Let's say that one more time.
So if we are at 6.0 on the machine, should the sensor read 3.475?
3.475. Are you talking about voltage? I think
You must be looking at voltage and pressure on the chart.
Well, the voltage would be 6 volts, obviously, but if he's looking, I believe he's talking about the pressure on the fuel tank pressure sensor. It should read the same as what it shows on the pressure gauge. Okay, the voltage, if you're looking at
Yeah, there were 6 inches of water and it was 3.475.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's where I thought it was coming from. Yeah, so that is correct.
Okay,
Okay, so now we can get back to this and do,
we're going to do the leak detection pump test. Number 5.
now again, your scan tool has to have this bidirectional ability to do this test.
And different manufacturers have different, they may not all have the same tests, or they may not support this.
And you may get aggravated like we all do in the real world. It works 1 minute, next minute it don't work. That's why you have multiple scan tools. Okay, still establishing communication. Any other questions while we're waiting for communication? No other questions? All right, well, we don't want any dead air here. Anyone have any tips or anything they want to,
Not so much, I have a tip, not so much a tip for how to run this test, but if you're doing something like this and it's taking too long, and you have something else to do, jump to it and come back. Yeah, well, I don't know about that long, but, you know, so that you don't feel you're wasting your time, it's a good idea to have this multitasking ability, something else you can do while you're waiting for the scan tool. Because we know, as is happening here, these things take time. You know, sometimes they fight you, sometimes they won't go in, or they won't initialize, or, you know, we all know how these things can drive us a little crazy.
and again, we do prepare, guys. If this happens in your shop, like I said.
Yeah.
You know, this worked before, why it's not working now, anyone's
Yeah.
guess.
Computers, you know, we love them and we hate them.
I have a real world tip that's real simple. If I could get a microphone to walk over here.
Okay. Maybe John will go there.
All right, he's coming. Here's my real world tip. Do you ever, I just got a car from another shop and they needed us to diagnose where the evap leak was, and it was the gas cap. I don't like, customer doesn't like when you charge them $100 to diagnose the evap leak and it's a $13 gas cap. So I always sell the customer in a hope and dream. I delete the code and say, drive to the parts store, put a gas cap in it, then come back to me if it comes back on. I haven't had to deal with that again in 2.5 years ever since I started doing that. And not only that, they'll feel a little good that you didn't want to charge them right away, so you're easing them into it. So that's my tip.
It's such a big problem that Ford Motor Company put, you know, a light just for the gas cap to check the gas cap. Because a lot of people leave them loose or they're bad.
How about
Honda had a rash of bad gas caps.
And what's with the new cars that don't even have gas
No
caps
gas
anymore?
caps. Well, wait for the seal to go.
And the other thing
It
is,
tells you no cap.
and by the way, the gas cap could have been damaged by the customer or somebody at a gas station. You know, the gas caps with the plastic tether that holds it. If they pinch the tether under the cap, they'll deform the seal on the cap, and it may not come back.
Do we want to maybe get just a different vehicle in?
Show this test.
Well, Neil will prepare this vehicle and take everything off and...
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring another one in, and then while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and, I might have to reboot this, guys, I apologize, it's been sitting here the whole time with the key on.
And we've run this test multiple times successfully today, so it's, you know, you've all heard of Murphy's Law. Boyle's Law is...
Oh, let me go back to this car to give you some quick stuff, Mode 6 on here. I'll do some Mode 6 stuff on here.
Could you answer a question in the meantime?
Sure. I'm gonna unplug this.
You want me to
Plug. Yeah, I'm listening to that.
What's the best way to leak test a vehicle with LDP? How do you properly close the vent without a scan tool that has the bidirectional control?
Okay, so the question's being asked. Without a scan tool, how do we close the LDP?
Well, just to close the vent, we know that if we apply vacuum over here to the atmosphere side,
We'll get into that.
let me bring this back in here.
Not gonna run.
But off the left, right? And this will work sometimes, but you want to be careful as to how much vacuum you apply. But basically, we know when the system's at rest, the diaphragm is down and the vent valve is open, right?
The question is, if a scan tool don't have bidirectional, what do I do?
Yeah, how am I going to get that? Well, there's a couple of things you could do to test the system. You could actually go through the vent with the back door open, and you could put smoke into the system, and you're going to, because we're blocked up here going to the manifold vacuum, you could put smoke into the system that way, couldn't you? Sure. But I'm not testing my vent valve. And the vent valve is really what I want to close. I want to make sure it seals, right? So what if I took the line off over here, because I know that this, from what we talked about earlier, I know the plunger's got blocked off here. What if I applied about 5 inches of manifold vacuum, or from my hand vacuum pump over here, and what if I just applied some vacuum and pulled that diaphragm up a little way so that it closes the vent valve? Okay.
So you can use a hand vacuum pump. Why don't we show them? There's a hand vacuum pump right there.
It's going to leak a little. Big leak. But what you can do is, you would just remember that you go to the side that has the electrical connection, and you don't want to put too much vacuum here because you might pull that valve off the seat, on that shell valve. So you just want to apply just enough vacuum to lift it. You can watch the switch, but if you're not using a scan tool, you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So maybe 5-6 inches of manifold vacuum, not.
It's the same thing like EGR, 2 to 3 inches of EGR vacuum, not 20 inches.
Yeah, exactly. Just pull it up, just enough to get up off the seat, and that'll close the vent valve, and you can go ahead and apply smoke through the service port, as well. And that way you're testing the seal and the whole system. You're checking the vent valve and the system.
While you reboot this, you can take this away. I'll do Mode 6 on here. So what I'm going to show you guys is, let's look at some more information on this vehicle that we have here. Of course, you'll have to be patient and sort of wait. You go down right here, you go into Mode 6. He's on, right?
These on.
So now you're going to see a bunch of information that I utilize quite a bit that helps me to see if something failed. Remember, Mode 6 is before a pending code. A pending code is before the DTC. So you can see right here I got a fail. You don't know what monitor ID, 3B, test ID, C2, you have no clue what that is. But if you hit enter, it tells me Evap monitor, 0.04 inch Evap test that we had a fail on this. Okay. Now, this one's not allowing me to do a refresh, which I like doing, to give me the latest info. There were a few other ones in here. We don't know what they are until we go down. We don't care about the O2. These are all passes. To give you some idea, there are other Evap ones in here. So, you know, the O2 information, obviously, you can use before you change an O2 sensor or a catalytic converter. Here's the cat one. Here's Evap, large leak vacuum test, and it passed. So going out is a specification, kilopascals, that it actually passed or not. There's another one, large leak. The last time it ran it did pass this and only failed one. But there's a few Evap ones here. Purge, it passed. So we have quite a few. That, we know, well, it did real good. So there's mode 6 information that you can easily look at. Let's see if there's any questions on that thing.
Yes, Jeff has a question. Sometimes, if I can't see the smoke when the vent valve is closed, I use my nose to locate the leak like a leaking FTPS gasket. If you could restate that. Talk about using a smoke analyzer, emissions analyzer.
Jeff said sometimes when he doesn't see the smoke, he uses his nose to see if he's smelling any fumes because he had it near, there was a leak there?
FTPS gasket.
An FTPS gasket. So, yeah, some cars, you know, there are hydrocarbons that are going to come out when you're pushing. That's another reason to use a proper smoke machine. And we will be able to test the system like that.
But how about using an emissions analyzer?
We're not talking about any other tools in this particular workplace. There are other ways to check it out in case there's an issue. The thing here was to do a lot of quick, easy stuff with a scan tool.
Doesn't Evap leaks sometimes make a lean condition on the oxygen sensor?
That depends where that is. The question was, doesn't sometimes Evap leaks make a lean condition? Well, that depends. If the purge valve was stuck open, the purge is normally closed, right? Everyone remember that? Purge normally closed. If it's sucking not fuel vapors, because if it did fuel vapors all the time, right? If we had hydrocarbon vapors in the canister, we had a canister that was flooded with raw gas, then obviously we would have, excuse me, a rich problem. I told you my throat, my cough, I apologize. You would have a rich condition. But how about if there was nothing in, the hose was disconnected, and it was constantly just pulling vacuum, the valve was left open? It's a possibility. I would look at short-term fuel trim. I would cycle the valve on and off to see if it works. You know, again, you could use some other tools to see if that's happening. But with a smoke machine on there, I could see if I smoked it from one end, when I shut the valve, does it stop? When I open it, does it allow it through? Remember, the valve is normally closed, so we could cycle it. Another question, Craig?
Where can you find all the Mode 6 info if your scan tool doesn't have it?
Okay, there's three. Where can you find all the Mode 6 information if your scan tool don't have it? There's 3 good scan tools on the market, and this is not a scan tool commercial, because we don't care which one you buy, but I want to give you the answer to your question. The answer to the question of that would be either this OTC Genesis, Pegasus type tools, or here's the Evo Genesis. ATS, Automotive Test Solutions, the eScan does a great job in decoding, and Ease. Ease is another tool that does a very, very good job on Mode 6. If you don't get the information there and you own a different brand tool, you need to go to www.nastf.org. That's the National Automotive Task Force. nastf.org. And go to the dealer website. Hyundai or Kia, so you paid nothing, it's free. If you go to the other ones, it may be $20 or $19 or $10 or maybe $50. It all depends. So there's where you can use the Mode 6 decoder information. Maybe you only get hexadecimal data on your particular tool. That's where you can get it. Any other questions, Craig? Okay, so let's look at a couple of things here. They're still working on that. If we go into data streams, some of the helpful things I told you before, and let's see if we can get some auxiliary emission stuff here. Excuse me one second. Oh, great, here's some good info where I can go in here, and remember I told you graph it? That one's not gonna help us, just pass or fail, but there, evap purge solenoid. I could see that. So the ones that are blocked, I'm gonna block those out, we don't care about those. Let's get, okay, here's a good one. So when you do this and you graph them, we get a line coming across, just like you see up here. You can see the line here. Real important, if you see this thing really going up and down and causing an issue, well, that's that fuel tank pressure sensor, isn't it? And look, we got something going on here. Now granted, the scale is from negative 0.22 to a negative 0.33, but see how your eye will catch a change in that? As it's a lot easier than a change in a number. So we're really not doing much here on this fuel tank pressure stuff. These are about graph the voltage. So there's the voltage too. We got just a little bit going on, and it's really not going to make a difference if I put this on. I put the smoke machine on. Well, it did seem to steady out, so probably something small is getting back there. So from the bumps on, let's see if it bounces back. Yep, so it ain't bouncing back yet. But that's one way to do it, so when you get out of this, if we go out and I go into special test, and I go into EGR, EGR, I'm shot in the head. Evap, I'm sorry. There's my, I can take this here, hit more, I can move this to the top. So now I can see my evap. I'll go down and look at the other evap stuff. And you guys just let me know when you're ready over there.
Yeah, I'm just walking back up through the menu.
Okay.
And I have a question too when you're ready.
Okay, I'm just going to move these two to the top to show you this is really the easiest way we can look at this and graph it out. But this particular tool, since I know it quite well, you can graph all this and go in. Some tools don't give you that ability. And you always want to pick PIDs that are going to give you information on what you're testing. What do I care about engine speed, for argument's sake, or an O2 sensor? I'm not going to worry too much about that when I want to see this going on right here. I want to see if my purge solenoid is excuse me, working, or the fuel tank pressure. You guys better be ready now. That's all I got. Excuse me.
By the way, what part of what Jerry was saying, I'm not near a microphone here. Part of what Jerry was saying is that if you pick up too many PIDs, what happens is you slow down the data transfer rate. It takes longer for you to update your information. If you only have like 3 PIDs like that, then you're going to have a much faster update rate. Craig had a question.
And the ones you're looking at, the other ones may not be important.
They're not important. They're just slowing down the test.
I apologize.
Yeah. The question was?
We have 5 minutes. On what vehicles can you control both valves with the scan tool? Do you think it's a good idea to cycle the purge valve and or vent valve to listen if they are working correctly?
Okay, so what vehicles can you cycle the purge and vent valves? On many, but again, dependent on your scan tool, dependent on the manufacturer. Do we think it's a good idea? Hell yeah, it's a real good idea. Now hearing it, I got a little problem with
Sometimes
hearing
yes,
something.
sometimes no.
But
you know, and you don't know if it's really sealing or really open.
Just like we went over before. This is why if we had the smoke machine, we could look at the pressure, we could look at the flow,
right,
and verify, is it really opening or really closing?
Right.
Without taking out lab scopes or amp clamps or any of that stuff, you want to keep it simple.
Yep.
Why take out the heavy artillery when you could do it with a BB gun?
That's right.
Right?
Quick and easy.
Quick and easy. And that's what we want to do.
Very
Any
highly-
other questions?
Very highly
Any-
recommended.
any
Okay, are we up and running?
Well, let's see what we've got here. We're over here now. Let's go ahead and switch it.
Okay,
We're
we're
going to
gonna
give
switch.
it one more shot. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then we'll blame it on technology, I guess.
In-
But,
While we're doing that, what's the difference between pressurizing the system from the gas neck, the gas cap area, or from the port valve under the hood if the vehicle has one?
it's the same thing, really, because both of those are Evap service port. The one up front is the Evap service port, and it's going to give you access. The same thing when you go through the filler neck. You're going
But I think where the guy's probably coming from is, why do it for the front, why do it to the back? As we said before, if you have a rollover valve or any type of ball that can clog the neck up, well, what happens is the smoke's coming, let's say, from the front of the vehicle, hits the ball closes the neck off, we got a rusted neck, filler tube area, we're not gonna see that, right? So you really wanna check, like we said earlier, we smoke it from the front, take the gas cap off, if no smoke comes out, you either got a big ass leak underneath the vehicle, right? Or you have a rollover valve that's there. And you would see by pressure anyway.
You know, there's another thing. Some tanks, modern tanks today, they're shaped, you know, like some modern art sculpture, and they have multiple vent passages within them, and they can have valves inside the tank that can cause problems. So that would be the reason to go back to the neck if you didn't get the results you wanted from the front.
Right. Okay, we got a few minutes left here.
Yeah, I'm afraid, G, that for some reason, and I don't know if
Well, let's give that a second while that's doing that. Let's do another $50 gas card this time, and then we'll do one at the end, the iTunes card. This is for the gas card. Winner is
The winner of the gas card is Paul Suter.
Paul Suter.
Paul Suter.
Paul Suter, $50 gas card.
That's to
winner.
type his name in.
Please type your name into the bar
And your email stuff.
and your email, and that way you will receive this $50 card. Okay, and we have one more if you hang in there with us. We know it's tough. You have any of our buddies on from Australia?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Very
Okay, it
good.
looks like we're working again.
Actually, what we're going to do is we're limited on time here. I want to talk a little bit more about, we talked about zeroing the gauge. We did talk about the leak detection pump system. There's also another important system out there that's a natural vacuum leak detection. I'm afraid guys are going to have to jump across the leak detection pump other than what we've already covered. So I apologize for that. I don't know if it's what the communication problem is, but
Oh, we said it's live. Stuff
it's live and
happens
stuff happens. So anyway, this is a quick way to check the leak detection or the natural vacuum leak detection system. The quick trick here is to go in through your filler neck adapter, because this particular system does not have an Evap service port. So you're either going to have to tee into the purge line or do a quick easy test here. And when you have your hand vacuum pump applied, we can actually draw a slight vacuum on the system, because the natural vacuum leak detection, the NVLD switch or the ESIM switch, is going to close at a very slight vacuum. So this is our connection, and as you can see, as we're pumping just a little slight amount of vacuum on the system, it comes up real quickly. Let me go back here. Okay, so it's just a slight pump. This is inches of mercury, isn't it, on hand vacuum pump?
Yep,
So
right there.
so what happens is yeah, there we go, right. Okay, so here's a hand vacuum pump, and this is millimeters of mercury vacuum on the inside scale and inches of mercury on the outside scale. But as you can see, this is when we pump vacuum up on this, it's gonna go way over 1 inch of water column real quick.
Real quick.
But because we're applying vacuum to the whole system, we can pump this up a few pumps before it starts applying vacuum. So when that happens, you can actually watch the switch position. In this case, it's open because it's not at 1 inch yet, is it? Now this is again why we want to have our pressure gauge calibrated accurately. As I continue pumping up the vacuum, then I see that as I approach 1 inch, it's going to go ahead and close the NVLD switch. Guys, this is the only way you can see if that switch is closing at the proper value.
And again, look how critical
Yeah.
this is.
Exactly.
And if yours is not adjustable,
Yeah.
you can have an issue.
Exactly right. And the quick trick here is using the two together. Now all of a sudden, I've got insight into the system that I don't normally have if I'm just looking at the scan tool or if I'm just using my smoke machine.
Correct.
If I use the two of them together, it's a great little quick trick. Are we out of time? We got a couple more minutes? We've got to do one more drawing, huh?
Okay.
We could go overtime live. It's just not the YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's just, go
Okay,
one more.
let's run this, we'll do the live.
Let's talk once more about the die. We weren't able to show the die because obviously the camera restrictions, but this is a, let me back up one
Yeah,
slide.
go back up.
This is a Ford canister, and this one was an interesting one because, and I'll make this brief, that when it was smoke tested, there was smoke coming out around this vent valve and this filter area. So the common thought would be, okay, I got a vent valve that's not sealing, or the filter, this assembly has got to be replaced. So it was replaced, and lo and behold, here comes the customer back. Sooner or later, this got to the point where they finally had to realize that after, how many vent valves they changed, that maybe it wasn't the vent valve. So they found this problem, and this diagram shows the picture with the vent valve in place and then what's underneath it. And underneath it, there's a couple of plates here that they glue in place as they assemble. And where's our clicker? There it is. Okay, so on this next screen, you can see here's where the actual leak was, and you can see it right here.
Quick, did you catch that?
The UV dye is building up at the point of leakage, and it's right around that seal. It's supposed to be cemented in at the factory. So they actually had a
Made in China cement.
something was going on because it wasn't sealing. But the point is, by using the UV dye, they're able to quickly see the point of leakage. Here's a Nissan, and I know that this is another situation where it's important to see the dye. Anytime you have a condition where you see the smoke but you can't actually get in to physically see where it's coming from, the UV dye leaves a dye trace right behind that makes it quick and easy to see. And as you can see, it's something that doesn't go away. It's there when
It's
you,
there, which is
when
good.
you-
Again, it's not seeing it like in the smoke. You're gonna see it staying. Now, I've had some here right in the connectors where it comes up.
Yeah.
Just like you'll get gas and oil and tranny fluid and everything else come through these connectors. Well, smoke will come through it, and there's your evap leak. Some of them are very, very tough with the small,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
small leak.
Good point, and NVLD connectors, same
Yeah.
way, that 3-wire connector on the leak detection pump. I said NVLD, but leak detection pump, anything that's in the system that's connected has a potential for leakage.
No doubt, no doubt, John.
Here's a Mitsubishi system that was actually, this is where a borescope comes in handy sometimes, because this assembly is actually tucked up underneath between the fender and the,
Similar to the Hyundai setup here
Yeah.
with that filter setup.
right, and this one was leaking, as you can see, right at the vapor separator canister, and picked up with the borescope with
We have one right there.
borescope with the UV light in it. They call it, what's the part one?
It's a Flex View 3591 OTC that
So-
has the, you can see the UV light. Can you catch that?
So, those of you that have the UV light, anything with a 405 nanometer spectrum will fluoresce the dye. So, some of your air conditioning lights will work. The scope lights like this will work. So, there's a few other examples. Some of them have UV, some of them are just borescopes that you can come in and look for smoke or whatever. But the key thing is, guys, use those tools as well. We're a little bit over time now. Is there anything else that we want to cover before we wrap things up?
Let's see.
Did we do the last giveaway?
No, we need to
Well, we'll do that, but we'll do that at the end. Okay, we covered a lot in this hour and a half, but unfortunately, due to sometimes technical difficulties of scan tools and never mind the technical difficulty of my voice, we weren't able to cover everything. I'm sure we'll be covering this subject again in the future with more information. If you can give us some of your questions and your feedback, we'd appreciate it. I think we'll do this last iTunes card here. So if you could roll that out, Craig.
Helene Carote of Pep Boys.
Arlene Carote.
Helene Carote.
Helene Carote from Pep Boys, please type your name in the box with your email address so you can win that $50 iTunes card. And we would like to thank you from TST, Technician Service Training. We're a 501c3 non-for-profit group, and our goal is to help technicians like you guys, and we appreciate your support. Thank you for coming in and watching. Of course, here, John Height from, excuse me, from Smoke Wizard, and all the other fine smoke machines we used here tonight. We'd like to thank them for coming out and giving us a hand to do this. And we want to remind you, we do have some upcoming seminars. Tomorrow night, we do another one, TST with Motor Age. So tune in tomorrow night. It's absolutely free for you guys. Myself and Pete Meyer will be here. And we have a live one, Asian Imports.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday
The
night.
7th.
That is for pay. That's the 7th of June. That's for pay. So if you want to see some stuff, learn some good tricks on Asian, that's about 4 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours long, about 3.5 hours. And there is, what, a 60
bucks.
60 buck fee. So we thank you from TST.
And thank you from Global Leak Detection. Jay, appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Craig, thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thanks, Craig, for being behind.
Thank all of you for joining us tonight, too. Thank
Good
you.
night.